Oh, welcome back, Devils fans. It is your host, Ace, here on Running with the Devils, where we are talking New Jersey Devils hockey all year long. Please hit that subscribe button, smash the like, share with a friend. Thank you very much. I would be a terrible fan, I guess, if I did not first touch on the absolute bombshell out of Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. Earlier this afternoon or this morning, I'm not exactly sure when it actually came out, but made headlines. In case you were not aware, Jim Rutherford, the general manager of the Vancouver Canucks, cheers to all you guys, the GM of the Vancouver Canucks had his end of season media availability. And first thing I'd like to, say, before I even get to the bombshell that he dropped at the very end of a roughly 50-minute presser, if you sit and watch that, the media availabilities in what I would call real hockey markets, which is basically all of Canada and, the big traditional powerhouse hockey markets in the States, the media is very different overall from the New Jersey Devils, obviously, as many of you know, but they field some real tough questions. And in this end of season media availability, Jimmy Rutherford and the other dude that was up there with him, I actually don't even know who he is. Some other, he's either the president or some other suit was up there with Rutherford, and they took some real heated questions from the media, and they stood trial. Shout out to them for, having this type of forum, and most real, like I said, hockey markets do, and they were just letting them rip anything they wanted about players, the season, and they were answering them to their credit. But at the end of this 50-minute or so session, somebody in the media had asked about Quinn Hughes, with his contract being up in 2 years and kind of the outlook on Quinn Hughes. And that is when Jimmy I think lost all sensibility.
I think the greatest fear for Canuck fans here is 2 years from now. Quinn Hughes can become an unrestricted free agent. How cognizant are you with the moves that you're going to be making this summer and within these next 2 years? Do you consult with Quinn? Do you let him know what the game plan is? And when do you start thinking about an extension for Quinn Hughes? Because I think that'd be one loss with this franchise. I don't know if you'd ever bounce back if he was to leave here.
Totally agree, 100%. The one thing that we will be sure of, that we will have enough cap space to offer him the kind of contract that he deserves. That's the one thing we can prepare for. And it may not boil down to money with him. He said before he wants to play with his brothers. And that would be partly out of our control, in our control, if we brought his brothers here. So there's many moving parts here. Agree 100%. This franchise cannot afford to lose a guy like Quinn Hughes. And we will do everything we can to keep him here, but at the end of the day, it'll be his decision. Well, we got to be careful with tampering here, so we'll just leave it at that. I probably crossed the line, anyways.
I mean, Jimmy, Jimbo kind of went off the handle, in my opinion. Now, I'm curious to see if anything happens with this, but essentially, in response to the question about Quinn Hughes and his contract status, he essentially said that, I'm not going to say verbatim, but something close along the lines of, it might not be just money with him. And he said, or actually, I don't want to mess this up. Before that, I think he said, we're committed to Quinn. Part of that is planning ahead. They were talking about planning their teams in the future and constantly looking at what the team looks like next year and the season after, et cetera, et cetera. And all teams do this, obviously, playing with cap projections and where prospects might be, kind of an organizational depth chart into the future. But he mentioned, having the cap space and the money to give him the contract offer that he deserves or something like that, meaning they're obviously going to back up the Brinks truck and offer Quinn Hughes mega money. But then he added, it might not come down to just money for him. And then he kind of paused, I believe. And then he was like, he wants to go play with his brothers. Like, whoa, hold on a minute, Jimmy. Loose lips sink ships. And Jimbo was just serving it up on a platter. So he says, and then he said he wants to go play with his brothers, or he said he wants to play with his brothers. And then he said something like, that's sort of out of our control, something. And then basically was like, unless we bring his brothers here, like, to me right away when I first heard this, I thought for sure that this very well may be just crossing the line of tampering. Now, I've been looking into definitions of tampering, and I will say it does seem like a huge gray area. And so I don't expect there to be any sort of disciplinary action into this. I don't think. And in the end, I don't even care. And I'm going to get to why in a minute. I don't think, while it may constitute tampering, I don't think, being that they're Vancouver in the position that they're in, I don't think something like that would potentially remotely harm the Devils negatively. Like, obviously, a lot of people were, speculating that, oh, Quinn's a free agent in 2 years. Does he want to play with his brothers? And I would imagine up until this point that the common logic, right? And especially if you have a brother or anyone with siblings, like it makes sense, right? Why would it, 2 of the 3 are already on the team. How cool would it be for all 3 of your brothers that are somewhat close in age and grew up playing hockey together to now be playing on the biggest stage on an NHL team together, trying to win a Stanley Cup together? So it's obviously an amazing thing. And you would think, without any sort of confirmation or quotes, that obviously Quinn probably would want to come play with Luke and Jack in New Jersey now. But up until this point, it was just kind of common sense logic, if you will, that would get you to that point. And again, I think anyone with half a brain, no matter who you're a fan of, whether it's a Devils fan, a Canucks fan, or a team, any other team, if there's 2 guys, 2 of the 3 brothers on one team, you would think the other one would try to get there at some point. And so now Quinn's contract is up in 2 years. He will be an unrestricted free agent. The question's asked, and then he says he wants to play with his brothers. And then he talks about, again, unless it's out of my control, unless I brought them here somehow. I don't think this, even if it is tampering, it's not going to hurt the Devils, because the biggest reason, number one, I don't think Vancouver is really in a much better position than the New Jersey Devils in terms of competitive, Stanley Cup type teams on the horizon. If you guys didn't know, the future is bright for the New Jersey Devils. I mean, it's been solar eclipse bright for the past decade. Future is bright, but my point is the Canucks aren't this powerhouse. And so I do believe, if you're just equating which one am I more likely to win a cup in, I would say it's kind of a 50-50. If I'm not even going to get there. But I would say they're on fairly equal footing in that regard. Where the Devils have the massive advantage is, first and foremost, it's an American team. These are American boys, good old American boys. This is a team in New Jersey. You could play in much worse markets or geographic areas. I'm sure Luke and Jack both have kind of, if not love the area, they at least like it somewhat, and all the things that it does afford to guys their age. They could go to the city and go to all these places and get good food, blah, blah, blah. They've both been here now for a little while. Jack, obviously, longer. And so you could be in a worse market. New Jersey, geographically, and being in America, again, for a Hughes brother and for all of them, obviously a way better place than Vancouver, like hands down. And then obviously the other big advantage the Devils have outside of New Jersey versus Vancouver, we already have 2 of the 3 brothers. Duh. We already have 2 of the 3. Jack and Luke are already here. Jack's here for a while longer. Luke seems like he's going to be extended. He's a restricted free agent. Looks like, you would imagine he's going to sign a long-term extension at some point in the very near future. And so that gives you 2 of the 3 Hughes brothers here for a long time. What is the only missing piece of the puzzle? The third and final Hughes brother being Quinn Hughes. Now, lots of people, again, I think it'd be cool, but I'm not, clamoring to see this like a lot of other people are. It seems like there's just a large contingency of Devils fans that are just clamoring at the thought of having all 3 Hughes brothers. And listen, they're all very good players. And while I think it'd be awesome, Quinn is arguably a top 5 player in the league. I do feel like the money could be better spent, on forward help, but I'm not going to be, like mad if we get him. I'm just not dying to see it like everyone else is. But a lot of people are talking about, oh, trade for Quinn. This even further cements to me that there is no point in trading for Quinn, because now Rutherford himself has confirmed that Quinn wants to play with his brothers. So what does that mean? It's obvious what that means, guys. In 2 years from now, when he is an unrestricted free agent, Quinn Hughes will be a New Jersey Devil. That is right, my friends. Start the countdown on July 1, 2027. So you're talking about roughly 26 months from now. 26 short months from now, Quinn Hughes will be a New Jersey Devil, and it will cost the Devils. Get ready for this, guys. Get ready for it. Close your eyes. 0 assets to sign Quinn Hughes in free agency. 0. After 2 more seasons, he could come here for no assets to the New Jersey Devils outside of sign on the line that is dotted. Here is this truck full of money. Congratulations, buddy. You are a New Jersey Devil. And we now have all 3 Hughes brothers. For anyone to want the team to trade for Quinn Hughes, you guys are nuts. I'm here to tell you, you are nuts. For people that constantly look to the future and talk about how bright the future is, that's only 2 years away. We could get him for nothing. To trade for him would be an astronomical package. And now I kind of rewind back to Jimmy Rutherford for a minute. Now, why do I think he said this at the press conference? And I'm very curious, again, if this is going to count as tampering or not. I think you could make the argument that it was. I could also see the defense argument for why it's not. A very gray area, very, very cloudy, murky waters he's playing in. And then to make it even funnier, he even joked about, like, oh, maybe that was tampering after the fact. Like, what? He made the joke about it as if, like, that makes it go away after he realized he said something he probably shouldn't have. And then he was like, yeah, maybe I crossed the line on that one or something like that. The guy's a total loose cannon. I absolutely love it, uncensored. But we now have a concrete confirmation from the mouth of Jim Rutherford, GM of the Vancouver Canucks, that Quinn Hughes, in fact, wants to play with his brothers. They're both on the New Jersey Devils. It doesn't take a genius here to figure out the math. And the math is that Quinn Hughes will be a New Jersey Devil on July 1, 2027. Let the countdown begin. Now, with that being said, back to the people that want to trade for him. He could come here for nothing in 2 years. Now, in some fantasy world where they were going to trade him here for nothing to get him sooner, obviously I would do that, but that's not reality. And so I believe Jimmy Rutherford said this for one main reason, and it wasn't to try to influence Jack and Luke Hughes to somehow want to come to Vancouver and then for Tom Fitzgerald to somehow want to trade them there. That ain't happening. The ownership group is all in on the Hughes brothers. Fitz is all in on the Hughes brothers. They're going nowhere. We have 2 of the 3. The third one is coming here. It is now imminent. But Jim Rutherford said this, I do believe, to sort of now, I don't know what the term would be, to, I guess, condition or, kind of prepare, I would say, the Canucks fan base that in the end, if and when Quinn Hughes inevitably leaves, it's not on the team because he's looking for something that the team can't offer, and that is to play with his brothers. That only exists in one place on planet Earth, and that is in New Jersey on the Devils with Jack and Luke. That's the only way it could happen. And so I do think he's trying to set the table here for the fans to realize, like, okay, well, Quinn is going to be gone in 2 years. There's nothing we could do about it. And why does he want to condition them to start thinking that? Because now, like any other normal, sensible GM, he now realizes he has an asset that's expiring and he's got to cash it in. And now I would not be shocked. Now, again, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but it's clear that Quinn wants to play with his brothers. And so if I was Jim Rutherford, if I'm being honest, it doesn't seem like the Canucks are really going to be a true contender in the next 2 years. If I'm Jim Rutherford, I'm taking calls on him starting now because your max value to get on Quinn Hughes would be for 2 full seasons with 2 playoffs. Even with everyone knowing that he wants to go to the Devils, a team could essentially take him in as a 2-year rental right now and try to win a cup in the next 2 years, knowing you have no chance of signing him. And I think that with all of those facts in play, teams would still give a fortune to have 2 full years of Quinn Hughes. And so I don't think Rutherford's, not understanding of that. And I would not be shocked if they trade him sooner than later. I think they realize the writing's on the wall and they're now trying to, get the fan base to realize, like, look, this is the spot we're in. And as a fan, how could you be mad knowing that he's not going to sign there? If they traded him for a massive haul this summer, how could Canucks fans really be mad? I don't think they could because he's going to be gone. And so unless you truly believe you're going to win the cup in the next year, I mean, they're definitely not going to keep him past the deadline in year 2. That would just be completely crazy. So you're definitely going to trade him, if not, sometime soon at the latest at the deadline when he's then just a rental for just the playoffs and his value would be much less than it is now. So I'm very curious to see how this all plays out. Will Jimbo in Vancouver get hit with any sort of penalty or anything for the tampering that I believe he did do? We'll see. And how does this kind of affect the Quinn Hughes situation? Or do they just say, screw it, we're going to try to win the cup the next 2 years with him, and after that, wish him the best of luck in New Jersey with his brothers? I'm very curious to see how it all plays out. But in the end, if I'm the Devils, I am not trading for him. I just would not be able to part with assets knowing you could get him for free in 2 years. And you'd have to give a ton of stuff that hurts the team Quinn is coming to. If I was Quinn Hughes, I'd be begging them, just wait the 2 years, because he's coming to a team probably to end his career at that point. I assume he signed a long-term deal, and it would be, if not till the end of his career, for the bulk of the rest of his career. And why weaken the team? You should be wanting to come to a team that's as loaded as possible to really try to win with your two brothers now. So I don't know. Very curious. But for the people that want to trade for him, I'm sorry to tell you, I think it's completely maniacal. You wait 2 years, you get him for absolutely nothing. And it is what it is. But that's my kind of thoughts on Jim Rutherford talking way too much at an end of season press conference, and kind of the, bearing on the future. We'll be very curious to see how it plays out. But if I was another team that thought I was a Quinn Hughes away from potentially winning a cup, I'm definitely calling Jimmy Rutherford, like, as soon as he walked off that podium. And I'm like, listen, what's it going to take to get Quinn now? What's it going to take? And I'm sure there's a lot of teams that would be willing to pay quite a price to have 2 years of Quinn Hughes.